mist rolled in from the sea like a slow exhale from something ancient. It clung to the rocks, to the withered docks, and to the hollowed village of Blackmore with a kind of sentience, as if it were watching. Daniel Croft tightened his coat against the chill as he stepped off the rusted ferry. The dock groaned beneath his weight. Behind him, the captain muttered a short prayer and turned back without offering a word. No one else disembarked. No one ever did. Blackmore was smaller than he remembered, if he'd ever truly remembered it at all. The streets were crooked, buildings sagging, their windows opaque with age. Locals, what few remained, stood in silence. They watched him with flat eyes and lips sewn tight by fear. He passed a shopkeeper who swiftly closed her shutters. At the heart of it all, rising from a cliff like a finger pointing at the sky, stood the Blackmore Lighthouse, defunct, forgotten, or so the reports claimed. Its frame was skeletal in the grey light, but Daniel could swear. For a moment, a flicker of light spun from its peak. He blinked, gone. The editor at the Chronicle had handed him this assignment with tired eyes and a warning. "This is your last shot, Danny. 5 missing. Locals won't talk. Just bring me something real." Something real. His boots crunched over wet gravel as he approached the old inn. A rusted sign read, "The Mariner's Rest," swinging in the wind like a noose. Inside it smelled of salt and rot. The old woman at the desk didn't lift her head when she handed him the key. "Room 2. Her hand trembled. "You here for the lighthouse?" she asked without looking at him. Daniel hesitated. "I'm here for the truth." That made her flinch. Barely, but enough. As night fell and the mist thickened, Daniel sat by the cracked window in his room. The lighthouse loomed in the distance, a black silhouette against a dull, sickly sky. And then he saw it again, a faint beam turning, just once, before vanishing into the dark. He leaned forward, heart ticking faster. Was it a trick of the light, or had someone or something just turned the beacon back on? The next morning, the sky hung low like a shroud, and the sea roared with a voice that didn't belong to this world. Daniel made his way up the cliff path, boots sinking into the damp earth. The wind howled louder the closer he got to the lighthouse. As if the structure itself was breathing, he stopped at the threshold. The door wasn't locked. Inside, the scent hit him like a wall. Salt, mildew, something deeper. The kind of rot that clings to bone. The interior was frozen in time. Rusted tools hung on hooks. A broken lantern lay shattered across the floor. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust, except for a single path of footprints leading upward. He followed them, slowly. At the top, in the lantern room, the glass was cracked. The mechanism that once housed the great beacon was broken, wires exposed like snapped tendons. But what caught his eye was something shoved beneath the base. An old, leather-bound book, warped from moisture. He hesitated, then pulled it free. The Journal of James Harker. The first page was dated 1986. They come only when the light is gone. He kept reading. The entries grew more erratic, more frantic. Harker described strange sounds at night, shadows moving along the rocks, the feeling of being watched. One entry was underlined. They are not storms. They only move like storms, but they wait, and they watch, and they whisper through the tide. Daniel shivered. A water droplet hit his wrist. He looked up. There were stains on the ceiling, fresh and spreading, drip, drip, drip. But outside, the sky was dry. He turned back to the final entry. The ink was smudged, but the words bled through. If the light goes out, they'll come in. They need darkness. They need silence, and they need me. Daniel closed the journal, and from far below, somewhere near the base of the lighthouse, a soft creak echoed up the stairs. Not wind, not stone. Footsteps. That night, Daniel dreamed of her again. His daughter stood barefoot on a shoreline that didn't exist. Sand as black as coal, ocean like thick oil. She smiled, but her eyes were vacant. The sky above her churned, not with clouds, but with shapes, swimming just beneath the fabric of reality. She lifted her hand and pointed toward the horizon. "The light's going to die, Daddy," she whispered, "and they're almost here." Daniel jolted awake. The room was pitch dark. For a long second, there was only silence. Then, the sound came. Not the howl of the wind. Whispers, not inside the room. Outside, somewhere between the cliffs and the sea. Hundreds of them. Words in no language he recognized, spoken through waterlogged throats. He stepped to the window. The lighthouse stood black against the stars. And then, the light turned on. Only for a moment. A single, slow revolution of pale, flickering glow. Like the eye of something massive. Opening. Daniel grabbed his flashlight and journal, heart hammering, and made his way back to the lighthouse. The door was still ajar. Inside, the air was colder, wetter. The steps groaned louder. He climbed, trying not to think of the sound of waves crashing in time with the whispers, as if the sea itself were speaking. At the top, the lantern room was empty, but there were wet footprints on the floor. Daniel aimed his flashlight. Nothing. Then he heard it, behind him, from the stairwell he'd just climbed. A sound like something dragging. He turned. The light flickered. The beam caught movement. Something pale, crawling, just beyond reach. Gone. Daniel stumbled backward, breath ragged, as the flashlight cut out. Silence. Then, from the floor beneath him, a metallic screech. The old generator, the one that should have been dead, roared to life for half a second, just enough to power the great beacon above. The light spun, and in the brief sweep of illumination across the room, he saw it. A figure, humanoid, but wrong, dripping, eyeless, mouth hanging open like a wound, staring straight at him. The light passed. It was gone. He didn't scream. He couldn't. By morning, Daniel could hardly tell if he had slept at all. His hands trembled as he poured black coffee into a cracked mug in the inn's kitchen, his mind circling the same thought. Was it real? That face, if it was a face, was still etched behind his eyes. He returned to the journal, hoping for clarity. But something was wrong. There were new entries, ones he hadn't seen before. Same style, same ink. But the latest page was dated today. He's reading now. He found me. The light faltered last night. They were close. He heard them. I think they know he's here. Daniel dropped the book. He hadn't written those words, but they were in his voice. He turned the pages back and forth, hoping to find some mundane explanation. Mold patterns, ink runs, stress-induced hallucination. But deep down, he already knew better. He needed answers. At the edge of the village, near the collapsed docks, he found an old man mending nets. His face was a map of scars and broken time. When Daniel asked about Harker, the man froze. "You read the journal?" the old man rasped. "Yes." A pause. "Then it's already too late." Daniel stared at him. "What happened to Harker?" The man looked out at the water. "Same thing that happens to everyone who listens too long. They come to the ones who listen, not to kill, to wear, to ride." Daniel felt his blood run cold. 5 people missing, he said. "Were they?" Returned, the man cut in. Some of them, but changed, hollow behind the eyes, like the sea got in and forgot to leave. Daniel backed away. You want to survive, the man called. Keep the light on. Whatever you do, keep it on. The wind had shifted by the time Daniel returned to the lighthouse. It no longer howled, it whispered. Inside, the smell had changed too. Not just dampness or rot. Something sour, almost sweet, like flesh gone soft. He ascended slowly, flashlight in one hand, journal in the other. Each step echoed back strangely, as if the stairwell had grown deeper, wider. When he reached the lantern room, something in him paused. The glass panels surrounding the room were covered in a thin film of condensation. But it wasn't from the outside. The fog was inside the tower now. He turned to check his reflection in the cracked mirror on the control panel. But the man staring back at him wasn't him. It was James Harker. Sallow, dripping, dead-eyed. And as Daniel watched in paralyzed silence, the reflection blinked. Daniel stumbled back, nearly dropping the journal. When he looked again, it was his face, pale and shaken, but his, for now. He opened the journal to the next entry. Again, he hadn't seen this one before. Reflections lie. They show who they want you to become. Soon, you won't need mirrors at all. They'll live in your skin. He turned away, chest tight, heart pounding. Down below, the old generator sputtered once. Then again. Its cough was sickly, mechanical, but alive somehow. He rushed to the hatch to descend, but stopped. The stairwell had changed. The metal steps now descended into water. The first few were submerged, not dripping, submerged, as though the sea had crept up inside the tower, climbing like a predator in silence. Daniel stepped back, trembling. From the depths, he heard it. A low, wet voice, speaking in perfect imitation of his daughter. "It's okay, Daddy. Let the light go out." The storm came without warning. Not a roll of thunder, not a gust of wind, just silence. Then, blackness. The beacon light sputtered and died as the storm surged, casting the entire tower into thick, suffocating dark. Daniel's breath caught. The darkness didn't feel empty, Swo. It felt crowded. He fumbled with the backup switch, fingers slick with sweat. Nothing. The old generator coughed once and went quiet. The silence stretched, thick as tar. And then, the sound of water, rising, gurgling up the stairwell, slapping against metal, climbing fast. He backed away toward the far wall, heart slamming against his ribs. From the mist below, voices rose, not screams, laughter, low echoing laughter, like the sea itself had found humor in his fear. Then he saw them. First one, then three, then too many. Pale, dripping figures emerging from the stairwell, skin bloated, mouths open in silent hymns, limbs bending wrong. Some wore tattered remnants of clothing, fishermen, villagers, maybe even the missing 5. Their eyes were black pits, empty as shipwrecks. Daniel pressed his back against the rusted wall, the beacon above him lifeless. "Please," he whispered, not sure to whom. A voice answered from the dark, his daughter's. "It's better this way. No more pain, no more waiting. Just come into the water." She stepped forward, but it wasn't her. It wore her face, her hair, even her voice. But it moved like a puppet underwater, jerking softly, unnaturally. Her eyes weren't hers. They were hollow, borrowed. Daniel screamed and lunged for the emergency fuel cell tucked behind the generator panel. He fumbled the wires together. Sparks flew. The panel hissed. The light came alive. A brilliant, blinding sweep cut through the lantern room, slicing through fog and shadow. The creatures shrieked, recoiling, faces twisting in agony. They retreated, slithering down the stairwell like shadows being pulled by the tide. Only the girl remained. She smiled, sadly. "You'll run out of light eventually, Daddy." And then she was gone. Daniel dropped to his knees. The beacon spun. Outside, the sea boiled with something that was no longer hiding. And inside, he could feel the tower itself beginning to sink, not into the earth, but into them. The light held through the night. Daniel sat beside the generator, his clothes soaked, his skin chilled to the bone. He had rewired it twice already, each time a little less confident, a little more resigned. The journal rested open in his lap, the ink running from damp fingers. He stared at the next page, blank. He picked up the pen, hand trembling, and wrote without thought, without choice. "They let me write this." The words spilled out of him like seawater, like confessions torn from a drowning man. "They didn't take me, not yet. I think they're waiting, letting me tell their story, like they did with Harker. Maybe it's how they mark us, how they keep part of us, for the tide." His handwriting shifted halfway through the paragraph, slanting, curling into something not quite human. He dropped the pen. His hands no longer felt like his own. He looked down at his reflection in the glass panel of the generator. Not his face. Heron the girl, his daughter, mouth open, whispering, "You kept the light on, Daddy. But now, it's your turn." A tear rolled down his cheek and evaporated. Outside, the wind began to scream again, not rage, but hunger. Daniel clutched the journal, and with the last of his strength, he scribbled 3 final words across the inside cover. The light failed. Then the bulb above him shattered, and the sea came in. They never found Daniel Croft. The authorities blamed the storm, said the trail washed away, that the lighthouse had been unsafe for decades. His notebook was never recovered. But locals knew better. They spoke of the light. It had been out for 22 years, until the night Daniel vanished. Now, every evening, just after dusk, the beacon at Blackmore spins once, slowly, as if waking from a dream. No one is seen climbing the cliff. No keeper is registered. The power line has long since been severed. And yet, the light turns. Some say it's a warning. Others say it's an invitation. Fishermen who sail too close speak of voices in the fog, of laughter beneath the waves, and of shapes that shouldn't move the way they do. And sometimes, just before dawn, the light blinks, just once, like an eye closing.